Hello, and thanks for joining this webinar. Today's webinar is all about the AIB Diversity Inclusion Leader Emerging Leader Award as part of the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards. I'm Andrew Campbell-Eady. I'm Communications Manager at the Irish Centre for Diversity. Just some words to self-describe for those that need it. I'm a Black man in my 50s. My pronouns are he, him. I have shaved hair on my head and a black moustache. I'm wearing glasses with a thick, and the accent that you can hear is English, but I have been in Ireland for the last 12 years, and I haven't been able to lose the accent. Some words about the Irish Centre for Diversity, for those that don't know us. The Irish Centre for Diversity is a diversity and inclusion focused company that supports businesses and organizations to become more equitable and diverse. We're the leading organisation delivering D&I training in Ireland, and to date we've coached more than 250 companies across many sectors. Supported by IBEC, we developed, which is Ireland's reputation. Colleagues can thrive and share a sense of belonging. In addition to this, we offer full consultancy service to help with any specific diversity inclusion needs. We recently launched the first ever National Diversity and Inclusion Awards, which celebrates Ireland's D&I excellence across all areas. And this webinar is important to share insights and experiences so that any learnings can be applied to your organization. And hopefully you'll be in a position to enter the next cycle. As I said, today's focus is on the AIB Diversity Inclusion Leader Emerging Leader Award. Quick words about our sponsor. While AIB is a leader in EDI, diversity inclusion, equality, diversity inclusion, and a proud holder of Investors in Diversity Gold, which is the top tier of our accreditation framework, to maintain the award's integrity and transparency, they and the other sponsors were excluded from entering the process and also had no part in the judging. So today's session will be a great learning for themselves and for us at the Irish Centre for Diversity, because we couldn't enter either and we had no part in the judging either. In terms of running order, I'll shortly hand over to the award sponsor from AIB, and then we'll hear from some of the finalists and the award winner, and our highly commended finalists, and our award winner before some time for Q&As at the end. Some housekeeping before we start. We're joined by Sarah Garvey and Vanessa Nem, who are our ISL interpreters for today. Session's being recorded and will be available on the Irish Centre for Diversity website, irishcentreforddiversity.ie. Everyone is muted except the panel. Please do share where you're from and any comments in the chat section, but please save any questions for the Q&A function so that we can pick those up when we get to them. Without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our host for today's session, Caoimhe Scolard, who is the Group Inclusion and Diversity Lead at AIB, and Denis Doolan, who's Strategic Head of Inclusion and Diversity at AIB. They will shine a light on their organization's equality, diversity, inclusion advances, and lead what is sure to be an enlightening conversation. So without further ado, over to you, Denis and Caoimhe. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. I'm Denis Doolan, and I am a white male, in denial because I'm in my early 50s, but don't like the idea, but such is life. I am wearing glasses and a navy shirt, and I am the Strategic Head of Inclusion and Diversity at AIB, as Andrew mentioned. And we sponsored this award, and we're delighted to do so because, in our view, leadership is a critical part of being able to achieve success when it comes to EDI and inclusive leadership as a behavior or as a practice is crucial to any progress that would be made in the area, certainly from what we've seen and in our experience at AIB. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Caoimhe to introduce herself and take you through the first of 2 slides that we'll show you today to give you an insight into what we've been doing at AIB.
Thanks, Dennis, and good morning to everyone on the line. My name is Caoimhe Scolard. I'm our Group Inclusion and Diversity Lead in AIB, where I've been working for the last 8 years. It's my delight to partner with AIB teams to drive a culture of inclusion in the workplace. I'm going to start, Kira, by asking you to share the slides, and then I'll kick into the detail. For those who might benefit from knowing, I'm here at a standing desk. I'm wearing glasses, I have blonde highlights, wearing a pink blazer, and I'm in my early 40s, an Irish citizen and proud to be so. So just to give you a flavour of our own inclusion and diversity journey in AIB for the benefit of sharing best practices and getting insights from companies on different approaches that will help drive an inclusive culture. I suppose the first thing to say is that last year, we really, I suppose, put I&D to the fore. We launched a new inclusion and diversity strategy, and the ambition that we set for ourselves was to have a culture of universal inclusion. Kira, I might ask you to go on to the second slide, please. Just wait for the slide. Thank you. So yeah, the first thing I suppose to acknowledge is that, you know, unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that when people hear inclusion or inclusion and diversity, they sometimes think, well, that's for people in minority groups, and that's for those over there. And the idea with universal inclusion was to break away from that view that it was simply about minority groups or indeed gender balance. The reality is it is about them because they're more at risk of exclusion or discrimination, but all of us are different. There's visible and invisible differences. Everyone has a different background, everyone has a different lived experiences, and indeed anyone can feel included or excluded. So it's about all colleagues. And that's what we really leveraged with our inclusion and diversity strategy launch last year. In AIB, we see that everyone is a leader. We have leaders of self, leaders of others, and leaders of the business. And we set an opportunity for everyone to have a role to play in building an inclusive environment where everyone can achieve their potential and is supported to be at their best. We also said that we need a culture where everyone feels accountable for getting the best from diversity. We're a large workforce. There's great magic in our mix and in our lived differences, and we wanted to harness that and make the most of it. Now, to attain a standard of universal inclusion means that we need the behaviours that you see on the slide here. It requires things like psychological safety. That's the ability for anyone to speak up without risk of punishment or humiliation, knowing that their voice will be heard and that their decision counts. So when we launched this campaign internally, we really said that we need everyone to experience a sense of belonging from the organisation. We need everyone to be alert to the fact that we all, myself included, have unconscious biases. We need to be consciously inclusive. We need to make sure that we are curious and getting to know who is around us and how we can best show up for them and support them so that we leverage the full talents of the team. We want everyone to feel safety and to speak their mind. We challenged our people leaders to be the change they want to see, to cast a positive shadow on others. And Dennis is going to give you a flavour shortly of some of the learning and development interventions that we ran with to help us to really equip our people leaders to play their part in creating the right type of environment and culture so that we could really embrace the diversity within our mixed and ensure that we are driving an environment where inclusion is a universal experience for everyone. I'll hand over to Dennis now to give you a flavour of some of our interventions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Caoimhe. So we might go to the next slide. Thanks, Kira. So on this slide, what you'll see, and I'll call out just for those for whom it's beneficial, there are 4 key messages or 4 key shifts that we sought to make in AIB during the course of last year after launching that new strategy that Caoimhe spoke about. And to land these messages, what we did was we actually rolled out training, inclusive leadership training for all of our leaders, from the highest or most senior level of leadership right through all of the different levels of AIB. And that was rolled out to everyone, which is almost 3,000 people leaders. And we also then included these messages in an inclusion and diversity foundational module, training module, which was taken by just over 13,000 colleagues, either full-time colleagues or contractors that we work with on an ongoing basis. So I hope that makes it clear that it was quite a wide-ranging learning and development effort to try and get everyone to the same level of understanding and appreciation of the importance of this whole area. So the four shifts that we saw then were, first and foremost, number one was from equality to equity. So what we were trying to get across there was the understanding, which I'm sure many of you on the call would appreciate, is that not everyone starts from the same place. So whilst there may have been a good understanding, because we certainly were building on a very good platform in AIB with the new strategy, very good understanding of the need for equality, the understanding of equity needed to be introduced and then reiterated through the course of the year to ensure that you know, those who were starting from a different place and perhaps maybe facing some particular barriers were supported to get past those barriers and be able to reach their full potential. So we might just go to the second shift that we saw then, which is an understanding of the difference between representation and a true kind of transfer of ownership or responsibility, because obviously, you know, there is a danger always that, you know, there could be a strong focus on representation, but that it could be token, and that somebody could be, you know, involved in a team or put in a role purely because of whatever difference they bring. And we wanted to ensure we get past that, to ensure that if someone is in a role or is involved in a team or is even just something as straightforward as a meeting, that there is real opportunity to contribute fully to that and be part of setting the agenda, making decisions, all those kinds of things, so that there's real ownership and responsibility and accountability there, and not just doing it because it might look or seem the right thing to do. The third shift then, if we go on to the next one, was from unconscious to conscious. So I'm aware this requires hopefully very little explanation to all who are on the call, but, you know, as Caoimhe said, every single one of us has unconscious biases, myself included. So we did a good bit of focus within each of those learning and development interventions on just trying to raise the radar around that and make people aware that even simple things that they might not have thought about that could carry a bias may be something that they are susceptible to. And of course, you know, in driving that awareness then to try and reinforce the need to you know, get away from something that they might have been doing that was a representation or bringing that unconscious bias to life, and in fact go the other way around, become, you know, conscious of everything they were doing and conscious of the biases, and then moving past any behaviors associated with them. So then the last but not least was from passive to active. So this is really bringing home then what Caoimhe was speaking about, which is that we wanted to, and still are working on, getting everyone feeling part of this whole agenda and of the efforts to create a truly inclusive workplace, whereby it's not okay to just stand to the side and expect others to do it, but in fact, you know, every single one of us, no matter what difference, no matter what background someone is from, can play a role in this, and if we all do it together, then we are actually going to land at that goal of true universal inclusion that Caoimhe talked about earlier. And that's the last few bullets underneath there on the slide, which is, you know, this was our kind of final messaging, was to embrace diversity and back belonging, and that would create inclusion, and in doing so then that would make it universal. So those were some of our key messages in our learning and development interventions. And what I'll do now is, if you want to stop sharing then please, Ciara, I'll move straight on to talk with, to move us on to speaking with some of those who were shortlisted and received the awards. And just to reiterate what Andrew said, we were not part of the judging process, so I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more detail. And, you know, that's because, as we said at the beginning, progress doesn't just happen. It requires leadership, which is why we were so interested in this particular award. It requires intentional equity, inclusion, and belonging interventions. So I'm hoping over these next few minutes we can all learn from each other and use the power of the collective for greater impact in our organizations and in our wider communities. Now, our first finalist is actually unable to join us today, unfortunately. So I'm just going to briefly mention it. It's Kate Butler from Bank of Ireland. And I just want to mention the feedback that came from the judging panel. And they were impressed by her lead out of many firsts for the Bank of Ireland, and that wowed the judges with her achievements in driving change around supports in the area, for example, of fertility, surrogacy, menopause, and domestic violence, while also enhancing some existing policies such as paternity leave. And Kate was also praised as a detail-oriented agent of change. So as I say, unfortunately, Kate's not with us, but I hope that gives a flavour of some of her achievements. And I'm now going to pass over to Caoimhe to speak with one of the finalists who is with us today. Caoimhe.
Thank you, Dennis. I'd now like to introduce finalist Rachael Davies. Rachael works with GoTo Technologies, and again, I'm delighted to share some of the feedback that the judges had on Rachael. She took on the additional role of mentor with Black Girls in Tech and the communications manager for African Professional Network Ireland. Rachael's commitment to using her expertise and experience to help guide others and improve their experience really stood out for the judges. Rachael, I'd love to ask you to please tell us a little bit more about these interventions and how they're benefiting your teams at GoTo Technologies.
Of course. So with Black Girls in Tech, I work as a mentor and also as a country lead. So part of my role involves creating partnerships with different companies and helping them bridge the gap within the community. So we host events and place individuals and roles within their companies. Also at Black Girls in Tech, we have a in-house recruitment service. So companies would reach out to us looking to fill a role, just to see if we have someone in our network that role could possibly go to. And also at APNI, our focus is just to help our members elevate their careers. So last year we had our first career day with over 800 attendees and also 20 companies in attendance. This was really great because on a day, like on an average day, our members wouldn't really have the opportunity or the chance to talk face-to-face with these companies. There was hiring available on spot, CV workshops, and also the opportunity for people to get their headshots taken.
That's fantastic, Rachael. Thank you. It's really commendable to take a specific intervention and target a particular cohort to ensure that they're given the opportunity, as you say, for CV workshops and so forth. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us in terms of your experience with inclusion and diverse leadership within GoTo?
Yeah, of course. So I also lead the ED&I community here in Dublin. So this includes planning events, hosting webinars. We're also looking to have an antivirus workshop coming in the next couple of months. Also coming up from kind of different discussions from last year, sending out a survey just so we can document some terms, for example, that people aren't comfortable with. So we have like a working document, an active spreadsheet that was kind of like a little project that came from feedback from a previous survey. So just kind of little things that we might not think might matter, but to someone in the company, it's something that might have been eaten away at them. So being able to do that to kind of help someone have a more positive experience, I think it's been really good. And having the support from GoTo has also been great.
That's super, Rachael. Yeah, that's something we can relate to as well. And and I'm sure many on the call can, it's about, you know, the power of the collective and how you really need different voices and all voices to be represented. So it's nothing about us, you know, without us kind of thing, and making sure that what are typically small inclusion and diversity teams really harness the benefit of the diversity within their workforce and make sure that their voice is heard, and that that informs maybe policies that help drive a culture of inclusion, and that educate us, quite frankly, on how it is that we can do better. So yeah, really interesting to hear that, and great to know that you're gathering that feedback, because I think increasingly we all know feedback and data is what matters, you know, to help us really have the data points to drive positive change, because otherwise it could be, yeah, going after the wrong activities. Denis, you've come off mute there as well. I don't know if you have anything to ask of Rachel. No, that's fine.
My next,
yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you, Rachel. Denis, I might head back to you then to hear from another finalist. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Great, thanks very much, Rachel. Excellent stuff. I feel like I'm at the Oscars where I'm announcing someone who was unable to be there on the night, because our next finalist is unfortunately also not able to join us today, and that's Claudette White from JP Morgan. So again, I'll just give you a quick idea of what impressed the judges from Claudette's work. And what the judges said was Claudette is a passionate advocate for race inclusion, and she was praised by the judges as a thought leader in this space. And she's co-chair of BOLD, which stands for Black Organization for Leadership and Development, and has created a World Culture Day cookbook, and was also shortlisted for Advocate of the Year for the Women in Finance Awards in 2021. So well done to Claudette, and as I say, pity she's unable to join us, but I hope that gives an idea of some of Claudette's achievements. And Caoimhe, I'm going to hand you back for the next piece of the session.
Thanks, Denis. Folks, I'm happy now to introduce Anthony Kelly. Anthony Kelly works in RSA Insurance and 123.ie. He was highly commended in this particular category of diverse and inclusive leadership. And what stood out for the judges about Anthony was that he was a real powerhouse. So he was praised for being an inspiring advocate for diversity and inclusion. He's used his own personal experience to inform his leadership style, and his influence and commitment to drive culture change and create the most inclusive work environment was really strongly coming through in the application. So Anthony, could I ask you maybe to tell us a little bit more about yourself and the impact that diverse and inclusive leadership is having within RSA Insurance and indeed 123.ie?
Yeah, of course, Caoimhe. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Andrew, Ciara, James and all the gang at the Irish Centre for Diversity for setting this up, and of course yourself, Caoimhe, and Denis from AIB. My name is Anthony Kelly, as you said. My pronouns are she, or he, him. I'm a white gay male. I'm still in my 30s, just barely, I might add, Denis. I think I'll be in denial in another few weeks, unfortunately, as well. I couldn't be outdone, by the way, by Andrew and his black framed glasses. So today I'm wearing some leopard skin frames for those of you, and a grey jumper. I'm head of communications, culture and capability in RSA Insurance and 123.ie. I was delighted, first of all, to be shortlisted with Kate and Claudette, Rachel and Geraldine for this award, and I was delighted to receive a high commendation at the ceremony, which was a great night in Croke Park in early February. I think from my own perspective, and I think in general in the corporate world, it's very easy to view the kind of corporate world's growing emphasis on DEI with a little bit of cynicism. We've all seen it over the years, right? Where for a week in June, for Pride, many companies have rainbow washed. But having seen all of the finalists, all of the companies involved in the first ever National Diversity and Inclusion Awards, it was heartwarming really to see the ongoing work that they're doing combined with the work of the Irish Centre for Diversity and others. I firmly believe that we are now gone beyond that. And more than ever before, I see people every day who are genuinely disturbed by inequities and are motivated to address them. From my own perspective, my own DEI journey started at a very young age. I grew up in 1980s Ireland on my own with my single mother, Tina. I realised in my early teens that I was gay. And unfortunately, when my mum passed away at the age of 19, I was in that really difficult phase of trying to come out. I did come out to her at one stage when she was sick in hospital. And, you know, she said, I really was hoping you weren't gay. And I walked away from that a little bit confused, because here was this really liberal, strong person in my life. And I think I had the conversation again with her, and she told me she'd no worry about me being gay. But what her concern was that my life would be more difficult. And perhaps then at that stage, and that was the early 2000s, it would have been. But it's so good to see how far Ireland has come along in the last 10 to 15 years. If I look at the work that's ongoing, the work Geraldine even is doing in Garda, Síochána, the changes that we've made constitutionally for marriage equality, etc. It is a transformed country, but we can't rest on our laurels. I firmly believe we need to keep the focus on all things DEI. We've seen in other countries how easy it can be to slip back. So maintaining that, I think, is crucial. At RSA and 123.ie, Caoimhe, our purpose is to help people, businesses and society prosper in good times and be resilient in bad times. And for me, the two key words in there are prosper and resilience. So I'm a firm believer, and I think that this has been proven the world over, that companies with a diverse, inclusive, equitable workplace, they will thrive in good times and they will be more resilient than other companies in bad times. So therefore, creating that workplace requires more than just empathy. It requires from all of us an ongoing, intentional, proactive effort to turn that empathy into action. And we've had a really interesting DEI journey in RSA and 123. I've been here since September 2001, and it has been about turning empathy into action. In particular, our values of integrity and respect are at the heart of what we do from a DEI perspective. And in 2001, we developed our 21-23 DEI strategy. The strategy went through a midpoint review in and around May last year. It's robust, it's ambitious, and it has certainly laid a very successful DEI foundation in our business. As part of the midpoint review last year, we implemented recommendations from an audit that was undertaken of our DEI endeavours. I don't know about you, but when I hear the A word, I tend to get a little mild palpitation in my heart. But we had a successful audit, and there were some fantastic recommendations that we brought into the strategy as part of the midpoint review. We also conducted focus groups to get feedback from our people, and we incorporated a new purpose and values as we were acquired by Intact Financial Corporation in June 2021. The strategy itself has three pillars. The first one is about building and growing. And this is an acknowledgement from us that in order to build DEI skills, knowledge and awareness, to continue to create a culture of inclusion that delivers for people, businesses and society, we need to have a focus on education and understanding. The second pillar of our strategy relates to talent and community. And this is about enhancing not just our employee experience, but our customer experience as well. So that including different opinions and voices and supporting DEI initiatives in the communities in which we operate. And last but not least, and I think it's a really important one, and it was referred to, I think, by Rachael and by Caoimhe, yourself and Dennis, it's about impact and measurement. If we don't track and monitor progress, we won't know how successful we are. And I think that's a crucial part. And I'm very much always led by data-driven impacts and measurements. And I think they really inform and guide you in the right direction to enable you to highlight the good things that you're doing, but equally to focus on the areas that are having potentially less impact. So if it's okay with you, Caoimhe, I'd love to have a chat this morning just about some of the key highlights under each of those pillars that are helping to make...
Yeah, we have time.
Yeah.
And actually, Anthony, just before you kick into that, maybe I'll just mention one question that's come in that I think's right on what you've been speaking there, which I love, around, you know, values and behaviours and about kind of your legacy and on others. So it's about that empathy into action. And the question is, like, you know, what's your biggest practical initiative that's helped that, I suppose, statement come to life within your organisation?
Yeah, there are a number, like that. I won't say there's any one initiative, but there are a collective number of initiatives that, when brought together, can show action and can show meaningful action in the organisation, that we're trying to absolutely create a workplace that is diverse, equitable, inclusive, that represents our employee base and is reflective of the communities that we serve. And I think if I start going through some of the things that we're doing here now, we'll see that kind of empathy into action in progress. So first off, I think, and in relation to education, DEI knowledge is crucial. If people don't know, they can't contribute. So continuing to educate our people about DEI, and that includes myself as well, and so many people in our team, it's vital to embedding a culture of fairness, inclusivity and belonging. So we regularly invite experts into the business. It's a really simple thing to do, but it's one that continuously highlights, you know, even parts of the whole DEI framework that people may not understand. For instance, we had the Open Doors initiative in. They spoke to us about disability in the workplace. Shane and my team regularly organises ambassadors from the VHI and other organisations to come in and discuss mental health. We had a brilliant panel discussion with Human Collective. I don't know if you know of Human Collective, but they're a sustainable clothing company. And for every piece of clothing you purchase, a donation goes to 3 Irish charities, 2 of which are from an LGBTQ base. And just as you said, Caoimhe, about inclusion being for everyone, from your own strategy, everyone is unique. Everyone is diverse. And we had a great panel discussion with Human Collective for Pride last year, which we entitled Pride, a Place for Everyone. And Connor, Mamobo and Paddy were absolutely brilliant. And they really did, in their own way, bring that to life. And we had some great feedback from across the business. I think it's really important. Further, from an education perspective, I think we are planning to develop and run a number of mandatory training modules in DEI on our L&D platform Horizon. And just over the last number of months, we've introduced a new domestic violence policy and a menopause in the workplace guide. To the question that you asked me a moment ago, I think visibility is really important. People have to see and feel the efforts that are underway to create a more diverse, equitable, inclusive workplace. And we're working on a number of core objectives to enhance that. The first of all, over the last 18 months, we've introduced blind CVs into our recruitment process. We use a tool called Textio, and that reviews the language in our job descriptions to remove bias and make sure that the job descriptions, that anyone who reads them feels I can apply for that. We have gender equal interview panels, and all of our hiring managers, to your point, Dennis, have received unconscious bias training. And recently we've rolled out a new program called Rise, and Rise is about promoting female talent within the business, and it's part of some of the initiatives we're rolling out to reduce our gender pay gap in the business. Some of the big ones, and I'll call out 2 or 3. One is that I'm really passionate about is EPIC. EPIC is from Business in the Community. It's about employment for people from immigrant communities. And it gives immigrants the opportunity to apply for roles within organisations. And we're a sponsor, one of the main sponsors of the programme. And over the last year, we've hired 6 people from the programme into our business. And we've run experiential in-office workshops for members of the programme. And I was delighted to represent RSA and 123.ie at their graduation event, which happened last December. And it was lovely to see my own colleague, Kay, from our People and Culture team, graduate from that. The other one that I'm really passionate about, and actually I just love being involved in, is the work we do with Trinity Centre for people with intellectual disabilities. That centre aims to promote inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities in education and society. Over the last year, we've offered 3 internships, and we run CV preparation and interview skills courses for first-year students. We're running that course again over 3 Mondays in May. And going to your point, Dennis, on representation, moving to ownership, last week to mark International Neurodiversity Week, our intern from TCPID, Cliona, sent a message out to the business. We got such incredible feedback for that, and we have a whole series of volunteers now wanting to get involved in those workshops that we're running in May. I'm conscious of time. Caoimhe, cut me off whenever you want. I did say at the outset your problem with me would be zipping me. So at any stage, jump in. One last thing.
Yeah, no, I suppose what I'd just say is, Anthony, it's clear, like, you've got so much, solid progress made on inclusion and diversity within the organisation. There's so much there that resonates, I think, with a lot of what's been said. Even having a mentoring or a talent program rise, that's speaking to equity, because people aren't starting from the same place. So I think the key thing to just impart on everyone, is that we're never done, I suppose, with inclusion and diversity. Like, the world is changing constantly. As you say, we need to reflect societies that we serve. So it's about listening to those different voices, making sure that we factor in their thoughts, that we use the data to guide and shape our thinking on what is it we can do better, and maybe where do we need to kind of focus our activities. So you've given a really rich insight to all the great things that are underway at RSA, and why indeed you were a deserved winner or shortlist for this category of award. And I'm going to hand over now to Dennis, who'll introduce us to our winner. But thank you so much, Anthony. Really good. And we might have some questions to follow at the end of the session.
Yeah, fantastic, Anthony. Great stuff altogether. And in fact, on the Trinity Centre for People with Intellectual Disabilities, just to add to that, couldn't agree more. We've found them fantastic to work with. And in fact, last week, we announced that one of the first ever intern we brought on from the programme has been made permanent with AIB. So yeah, really delighted about that. And he works at our reception in our headquarters in Molesworth Street and does a brilliant job. So yeah, there's lots more in that one. And well done, Anthony, on everything that you've achieved, along with, I'm sure, many others in RSA and 123.ie. So now we get to hear from the winner of the AIB Diversity and Inclusion leader or emerging leader, who is Sergeant Geraldine Greene from Garda, Síochána. So I'll read the judges' comments first, Geraldine, and then we'll hand over to you to just tell us a bit more. So the judges' comments were that Sergeant Geraldine Greene is a dedicated professional who has challenged the status quo in their organisation, redefining the role of D&I both within their organisation and within the public mindset. They push boundaries to drive the diversity, equity and inclusion agenda both internally and externally. So Geraldine, that sounds like quite an achievement. Maybe you could just shed a bit of light on it for us, and then might add a couple of questions as we go along as well. Thanks, Geraldine.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Firstly, I'll identify as white female in my 50s, like Dennis. I'm in denial, very much so. Would be blonde, but not quite there, greying. I'm wearing glasses today, not wearing my uniform, wearing a black jacket and a black and white blouse. So that's how I describe myself. Firstly, and because I completely forgot on the night to thank people, other people, I never thanked the Irish Centre for Diversity. I never thanked the AIB. So thank you to all of you, and a huge congratulations to all the other nominees, and Anthony as a highly commended as well. And it was great to hear Rachael, and some of the time hopefully I'll be in touch with Claudette and sorry, I can't think of her name, Kate Butler. And thanks, Anthony, for the competitive quote from my house insurance again this year from 123. That's always great. So just renewed. So look, the first thing that I want to say, and I said it on the night, and I didn't mean it to be disingenuous or flippant. I genuinely, wholeheartedly was shocked to receive the award, but honoured, completely honoured, because the work that we do and the work that I do is my job. and I get paid to do it. And because a lot of it is working with communities, I would see that as, well, that's what I'm paid to get to do. So to receive an award externally for that was a hugely proud moment for me and for my colleagues there on the night as well. And the recognition internally that we've gotten since has been huge. So I wanted to just say that again, that it wasn't just an off-the-cuff remark on the night. It was a genuine, overwhelming pleasure and privilege to receive that. So what I'd like to say about really my journey and my passion and where it comes from, and probably like a lot of what Anthony said about his upbringing and, you know, what shaped him from a very young age. I think I was around a lot of charity work and a lot of giving and, you know, recognizing other people that were in need from my mother. And I didn't realize a lot of it until her death last year, when she basically was a walking charity herself in giving, constantly giving to others. And it was something as a family we probably took for granted. But from maybe the age of 4 or 5, I had an awareness. I didn't know what the words were. I didn't know what equality or equity. I certainly didn't know what diversity meant or anything like that. But I had a sense of wanting fairness. And, you know, I didn't like not niceness, you know, and I didn't like bullies, and I didn't like playgrounds where you didn't get picked for the team, and it didn't sit well with me from, you know, primary school age. And even though I didn't know the names of those kind of things, I knew it was something that I didn't like. And another word that I didn't understand at the time, and I've heard, and Dennis has said it, and I've heard it, and it's something that we would be pushing for, is the belonging part of that. And at the time, I think I recognized it as safety, about feeling safe, and whether that was feeling safe at home or at school or in, you know, my community, and for people now in the workplace and in society in general. We can be included, we can integrate, we can all those things. But if there's no sense of belonging, we're at nothing. You know, we really need to push that agenda. So that's something that I'll be pushing on again. It might be a step too far at the moment for me in the organisation, because what we've done so far has been welcomed, but that's certainly on my agenda. So that's really where a lot of my passion has come from. I was probably thrown into the diversity arena. I won't say reluctantly, it just happened. I was transferred into a section. I didn't look for it, but given that passion that I knew was always in me, it's exactly where I need to be, and it's exactly where I feel at home. And a lot of people have said to me, you know, you've taken to this like a duck to water. And I really think that it was that upbringing that I had, and that I already had that sense of where I wanted to make a change. And for, you know, 25 years in the Guards, I worked in lots of different areas, and I did very valuable work. But this is the one time I really feel there's a time and a place to do really good, valuable work where we can make a difference internally and externally in relation to EDI. So that's one thing that I felt. I really felt when that I had arrived home. And I came into a section with a really passionate boss, really forward thinker, very progressive. Our diversity and integration strategy was launched, and shortly after that, my boss transferred and left myself and another newly promoted sergeant who was with me on the night, Dermot, to implement this new strategy. And we basically were, what the hell are we going to do with this? So with that as well came, very shortly afterwards, COVID. COVID hit just as we were starting to implement our strategy. So what we had to do was we literally hit the ground running. We thought the most important things were communicating to both our own people internally and externally, to all the communities that needed us and that needed to hear about what we were going to do. And if we had to do 100 Zoom calls, if we had to do everything online, then that's what we were going to do. And we did that. And we were sick of Zoom as everybody else, but very thankful to have had it in that time where communication was so key with getting messages out there. We made videos with, you know, members of the traveling community, members of LGBT community, to get that message out there about safety and about on Garda Síochána being a safe place to come and getting that message out there. So that was the first thing that we did, was that communication piece. So I'm just going to talk through a few of the issues on our strategy, if that's okay, because the implementation of that strategy, I guess, is what sets us apart in terms of, as an organisation, as a police organisation, and what we're doing, because we were operating in a vacuum of no legislation. So we're basically, and we're still operating in that vacuum, waiting for the government to catch up so that we can have that legislative basis for hate crime. But there's lots of other things that we could be doing in the meantime. And one of the things that we were hearing all the time was there was no definition for hate crime. People didn't understand what it was. So how could they report it? Guards didn't understand what they could take reports of, how to investigate. So the first thing was to introduce that definition for hate crime. But we also introduced a definition for non-crime hate-related incidents, which were the lower level things that people might have thought that they couldn't report. So after we implemented our strategy and released that definition, we then had to support it with policy and procedures where we set out how you could take those reports, how you investigate. Right through the entire life cycle of hate crime, we went through the whole thing. So that was the next step in relation to that. What we had to do then was to make IT changes to our recording system. And what we did then was we aligned all the protected characteristics in our definition. We aligned those to our bias motivations on our pulse system. And that sent a very strong message out that we were taking this very seriously, that we had the ability to record properly. And I think we all know the importance of good data and, the confidence that builds within communities and also internally. So we did that. We put a hate-related tick box on the incident. So if you report something to Garda Síochána and there's a bias motivation, we are obliged to select that tick box. And then we have to select one of the bias motivations to go with that. So that's an obligation on us, and we have committed to doing that. There's a H identifier then on the incidents, which allows us to identify and to do a good analysis on the data. So that's just our IT part. We in our office then would monitor all the incidents that go on our system on a daily basis. So anything with a bias motivation, we would contact the investigating member, make sure that the victim is being supported, and see what other supports we can give from our office. So that's in relation to our IT. We then revised the role of our Garda diversity officers. And some of you may be familiar with the ethnic liaison officer or the LGBT liaison officer. So we combined those two roles basically to be more reflective of our changing communities, to be fair. And we felt that 90% of guards on the street are firefighting and rushing to calls and, going from A to B. We needed people that were dedicated and had extra training in this area that could be called on when there was a diverse or minority community that needed more help. So we revised the role, we retrained, we gave them a full 2 days training. And somebody mentioned there about experts. We bring in experts to speak because I can't speak about the experiences of a traveller or a gay person or a black person. So we bring in those experts to supplement the training. And that's one of the most valuable parts of the training. So we provide that to all our diversity officers. We also provide training to other sections, and I won't go into that, but I mentioned on the night as well, hate crime training is compulsory for every Garda member and Garda staff in the organisation, and we are at what's considered full participation rate, which is anything over 80%, and we're at 85%. We're going to be publishing our hate crime statistics either today or tomorrow for 2022. So I can't give the number because it's not, the press release isn't gone out, but I can tell you it's between 20 and 25% up on last year, which I know no hate crime is good news, but the reporting part of it for us, all of the work we're doing with the strategy is reflected in that. If people have confidence to come to us and report, that's a good thing. And if guards have confidence to take those reports, that's a good thing. and we're seeing more and more much lower levels of errors with data. Everything has improved dramatically over the last number of years since the strategy has started. So some of the other things with the strategy, and you can interrupt me at any time to say you're talking too much.
That's okay, Gerald. We might just have maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I have one good question that's come from the audience.
So a few of the other things, we established a national diversity forum with all our diversity stakeholders. We established a Garda Traveller Advisory Group. We have LGBT dialogue days. We've the same thing with our religious groups, our disability groups and our elderly groups, and we meet them regularly now face to face. We introduced online hate crime training in 2022, 21, sorry, and up till yesterday we'd over 800 reports in via that service, and we deal personally in our office with every single one of those and assign diversity officers when we need to. We also introduced third-party referrals for hate crime. And we have a memorandum of understanding in place with CSOs and NGOs who can report on behalf of victims if you don't feel confident to go to a Garda station yourself. So all of this, like I said, all of this has been to increase access to us, increase our internally our confidence. We've loads of other initiatives going on in our EDI section in terms of our staff. So I don't want to sort of go into that area because they're another section, but we work very closely with them. But I will say that jointly with them, we're supporting the recruitment campaign, which has been announced this Friday. So I want to really reiterate that and get that message out there again, that without ourselves being representative of diverse and minority communities, we can't serve diverse and minority communities properly, not wholeheartedly. So we need those faces and those names to represent those communities with us, to stand with us and work with us. And you're going to interrupt me, Dennis, and rightly
That's
so.
okay, Geraldine. Yeah, just first of all, very quick reflection to say what's leaping out at me is how you've achieved the holy grail from my perspective, which is systemic change, not just episodic or event-based, but really getting to the heart of what you do as an organization and making a change that's driving this agenda, which is just so impressive. The question that's come in is, if you were to pick one moment, and I'm going to add a small bit to that and say, or perhaps one ingredient that you think has been the key to driving that change, what would you say it is?
Sorry, in terms of a moment, my own, or
I would say maybe in terms of, like, since you've brought in the new strategy, is there a particular moment that stands out to you that you're very proud of, or a particular ingredient or thing that you think has been the secret to making the kind of really, really big changes that you've made?
Okay, I think we've had huge senior leadership support, which is definitely needed. I can have all the great ideas in the world. So we have that with a very committed assistant commissioner. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that we managed to deliver training online to, 85% of the organization, and it's 4.5 hours long. And I know, and from our Garda College staff would have said that the hate crime almost broke online training because of the length of it. But the Irish Centre for Diversity independently did an evaluation of that training and of our diversity strategy before I ever knew about any award. That work had been gone on in the background, and it's showing how effective that training is. But to be able to say that we managed to deliver that training, but we see it, the bit that really stands out to me, I guess, is to see members and Garda staff embracing the whole EDI agenda, and to see the acceptance around what's now commonplace when you're investigating and when you're dealing with the public. What you need to go a step further. When we're training, I don't need to explain what equity is anymore. I used to have the step up thing and all of that.
Yes, yeah.
People understand that certain communities, it's not about extra attention or pandering or anything like that. It's about some communities need extra treatment or additional help to bring them up to par with everybody else. And that's acceptable. And that's very proud to be able to say that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm actually going to read the 2 comments from the judges that I forgot as I hand back to Andrew. I know, Anthony, you have your hand up, so I'm going to leave it to Andrew to whether we have time. But the other judges' comments were, you have an innovative DEI strategy that has demonstrated your ability to go above and beyond to serve those around you. So the judges described you as a true change maker who wholeheartedly deserves this award, and I couldn't agree more. Geraldine, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand back to Andrew now to lead us out of this. Thanks, Andrew.
And Anthony, I will come to you, but I just wanted to start by saying, by reiterating what a point you made earlier, that the huge change that Ireland's gone through in the last 20 years is incredible, and everything that you've all shared today, and Geraldine especially, reiterates that. I mean, huge cultural shift that's gone on within Garda Síochána, and also, I probably said that wrong, that's the English accent, I'm sorry. The huge change that's gone on in Zanti is so heartwarming to see. I mean, not just heartwarming, that doesn't really make it, but just incredible. So thank you to you all. Okay. Anthony, I will let you in now. If we switch to the Q&A section now, but Anthony, if you'd like to lead with the first question, then I'm guessing that's for one of the panel.
Quick point as well, Andrew, just to follow up on something that Geraldine said. Like, it's incredible to hear like the really systematic changes, Dennis, as you put it, that Geraldine, you've led with your colleague Dermot in Garda Síochána. And on the night of the awards, I think it was Assistant Commissioner Paula Hillman was present with you. And it is about getting support of senior leadership in organisations. It's absolutely vital. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do with Shane O'Donoghue on my team and with the wider and people and culture team without the support of our CEO, Kevin Thompson, who has just been absolutely wholehearted in his support of D&I in our business and anything we can do in our communities as well. So I just wanted to follow up on that point that you made, Geraldine. I think it's really important.
I think that point's been made by everyone on the panel today. I certainly heard it from Caoimhe and from Dennis, how important inclusive leadership and leadership on board is. So I think that is a key message that everyone watching can take. If you take nothing else, that should be the thing. It's about inclusive leadership and leadership on board with the whole EDI agenda. One thing I wanted to mention before we go to the questions also, and a few of the panelists have mentioned their work with Irish Centre for Diversity. Because we are the leading trainer for DEI in Ireland, it flows that we will have engaged with lots of the finalists and all the people that entered. But just to reiterate, we had no part in the job. So working with us didn't bring any extra benefits. What it maybe did do is maybe strengthened the entry, so that you went into the entry process stronger, knowing more about, with a firmer D&I grounding. So that's all. It wasn't, I think transparency and credibility credentials are very strong. AIB, none of the sponsors could enter, had no part in the judging, and neither did I. With that said, I will go to the Q&As now. And I did notice one really interesting question come in. It was, what advice would you give to a small team starting out on their journey in D&I to support and encourage someone that they recognize is an emerging leader? So in your organization, if it's small, if you can see somebody that is kind of shining in this field, what supports would you give them? And I'll throw that to whoever wants to chime in. Rachel, I know that you are an emerging leader. So what supports would you give in your mentoring, and what supports have you benefited from yourself, maybe?
So for me, I think the first step is actually speaking up. You're for me, my experience anyways, I'm always surprised as to the support that I get. I know sometimes you can kind of make a mountain out of a molehill in your head saying, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? What if no one attends to the things that I put on? So the first step is just saying it out loud and doing it. And also just kind of checking in with leaders, because the majority of the time they are willing to support as long as it's beneficial to the company in the long term and it's something that you're passionate about. And also just having a plan and some sort of structure. So before I kind of go ahead with any workshop or meetings or webinars, I would take out time to do the research, put a good plan together as to, okay, this is the outcome, these are the benefits, and these are the takeaways that the attendees will have. So they can kind of see it spelled out for them and just kind of be ready for any questions that they might have. So yeah, like I would say, the first step is just kind of asking, saying it out loud and saying like, hey, this is what I want to do. How can you support?
Thank you. Anthony, I can see you're shaking, sorry, you nodding there in agreement. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think Rachel nailed it on the head there, really. If you are, if you see an emerging leader in the business, I mean, embrace them, first of all. I mean, and I think the point we made earlier, I think AIB, Caoimhe or Denis made it, we see everyone as leaders equally in our business, and anyone who wants to lead out on a certain initiative, they will always get support. So as Rachel said, go and talk to someone in the business, share your idea with them. And, you know, don't be afraid to make a mistake. You grow from your mistakes. One other thing I suppose I would say is expect change to take time. Things don't happen overnight, and don't let that make you despondent. But equally, play where you can win. Look at the areas where you think you can win and do those first, and you build up your own credibility, and you open doors then for bigger and wider initiatives in your business. That'd be my advice.
That's perfect. And Caoimhe, is anything that you wanted to mention? Sorry, I'm just picking on you because you just popped up onto my screen now. You spotted
no problem. No, it's no problem. I'm never shy for a few words. I just echo what has been said. And I think, you know, for D&I professionals, it's really to challenge the status quo. Sorry, I dropped a lamp. Challenge the status quo. Be bold in your thinking. Obviously, frame what you're doing in terms of organisational need or contribution it can make to a group strategy or a people strategy or like that end customers. But yeah, be bold. You know, challenge the status quo and then look for that sponsorship. So again, we're very privileged in AIB. We've got sponsorship right from the board down to our executive committee and then all the different levels of leaders throughout the organisation. And it does take, you know, a village. You need everyone behind you. So I would think it's about, you know, ensuring that you have that sponsorship and visibility and that you maybe look for it. Or if you have this leader, emerging leader, that you invest in them and you invest in their agenda and you try things differently for them.
Right. Gerald, thank you for that, Caoimhe. Geraldine, I can see you've got your hand up there. So
yeah, and I just wanted to say as well, with our leaders, we also ran a leadership in diversity in policing course for our senior managers last year as well, which was undertaken by them all. And it had exactly in that was to how to identify and how to support people that needed that, and people, not even the emerging leaders, but people from diverse minority communities and that needed support. And also within our promotion process in Síochána, which is competency based, one of the competencies is in our area of diversity, and that everybody has to address that, whether it's to sergeant or chief superintendent or assistant commissioner level. They need to show their competency in the area of diversity, which is a great progression.
Brilliant. That's so good to hear. That's so good to hear. And the next question I wanted to address is there's a question about how do you keep energy levels in the business high on D&I initiatives and combat the inertia that somebody mentioned earlier. And I think Anthony kind of covered that in his last comment, that you just have to keep going and take comfort and encouragement from the work that you're doing is valued. People might not say it, but I would say just keep going because it really is valued. Denis, is there anything you'd like to add on that? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to come in on that one, Andrew. I saw that question. It's a really good question. One of the things we did last year, and we're going to do it again this year, is we have a month-long campaign, which literally means on every desktop. If you're in AIB, it's on every desktop, every digital display, and on our internal communications platform. But in addition to that, so that obviously then keeps it fresh in people's minds and kind of reminds them that, you know, it's not something we did once and has gone away. But probably more important than that, as part of that campaign, then we're getting teams to talk about EDI at a local team level. So in other words, the smallest team possible level. They will, you know, we give them tools like maybe a couple of fun exercises or a video to watch. And out of it, the idea is that they make a very short and simple pledge or commitment in terms of what they'll try and do to support the EDI agenda as a team. So I think that takes it from being maybe something high up or something, you know, that the board or executive committee are talking about, right down to something that, you know, Geraldine, the analogy in your world might be down to a station level, you know, down to where people are able to actually do something about it themselves at a local level and feel a sense of ownership about what's happening in that team, and maybe in teams that team is working with as well, if they see something or experience something that's not the kind of behaviors that we want. So that's how we try and keep the momentum and energy going, which I appreciate it's not always straightforward to do that. Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis. That made so many great contributions through the whole session today. But one thing I did want to go back to is, if I can quickly find it in my notes, my copious notes. Excuse me, I was intrigued by the statistic that AIB has trained 13,000 colleagues. I mean, not everyone on this call will benefit from that, but what I'd like to find out is, or what I'd like to ask is, what was the methodology from getting that throughput of training to the huge team, you know, the huge colleague base that you have?
Caoimhe, do you want to take that?
Yeah, no problem. I'll take it in the first instance. So similar to what Anthony spoke of that RSA, I think, are going to do, we actually mandated that everyone would have a base knowledge of inclusion and diversity. So it was a program or curriculum that Dennis and I actually created. So it was very much tailored for AIB, linked in with our strategy and based on feedback that we'd gotten from stakeholders in terms of where we really needed to focus minds and shift the dial. So it was a requirement that colleagues and contractors were included, obviously given the number that Dennis mentioned, would do that training. But I suppose it was the impetus for it, and even getting kind of executive committee sign off that it would be a requirement for colleagues to do, was that actually we wanted to ensure we attain universal inclusion, that everyone did play their part, but also we wanted to remove the fear that sometimes goes alongside inclusion and diversity. You know, people are fearful of saying the wrong thing, you know, they don't have the language maybe to engage in a topic of conversation, so they simply do nothing or they say nothing. So we really wanted to empower colleagues, and that was what the intention of was with the design of the training and the rollout of it. And we mandated it last year. New joiners will complete it as they join the bank this year, and then we'll refresh it and rerun it again next year. And to the earlier question, that keeps the spotlight on and makes sure that we're taking stock of the fact that the landscape changes and that the learning and development needs, you know, might shift gears, and that we need to reflect that then in a more up-to-date learning curriculum. So yeah, really heartening, you know, uptake from our training. It's great to see, and I think it is having an impact, because even on a day-to-day basis, Dennis and I would get more queries or, you know, issues being highlighted, and that's a really good thing, similar to what Geraldine would have said earlier. You know, then we know where we need to focus and how we can make improvements.
Yeah. I mean, it does come back, Andrew, to what Anthony and Geraldine were talking about. It's senior sponsorship, like that. To get go-ahead for mandatory training across all of AIB is not easy. So the only way you can get it is for all the senior leaders to agree and put themselves behind it, which they did without question. So it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, huge underline on my notes around leadership. So yeah, so great to hear. Another underline on my notes is a quote from Anthony, which is around knowledge and, you know, the value of training that you've all spoken to. And his quote was, "If people don't know, they can't contribute." So powerful. Thank you. On that note, I am going to draw the session to close because we realise how important everybody's time is, and we know that you've got other things to be doing today. So I'm going to start by saying huge thank you to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to our sponsors at AIB for helping us to stage the awards. Thank you to Anthony for being highly commended. Thank you to Geraldine, Sergeant Geraldine Greene as the award winner. Thank you to Rachel for entering and sharing your insights with us. Who else do I need to thank? I've got my notes here. I'd like to thank the tech team behind today's session for making it all run smoothly. Thanks also to our ISL interpreters. Just a note for everybody, the recording will be available shortly. Give us a few days, maybe into next week. And it will be shared on the Irish Centre for Diversity website. Please contact us through the website and register for upcoming webinars in the series and to view with the other recordings. So on that note, huge thank you to everybody and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thanks, everyone.